Absolutely. Well, it's great to meet you. Thank you so much for taking a minute out today. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks for talking with me.
You bet. And I would love to begin our conversation with the fact that we're coming up on this 4-year anniversary of the pandemic. How did you get through the pandemic and how did it change you?
Well, actually, I had a great time during the pandemic, and I say that understanding how devastating it was to the country and the world. We started out. We used to live in the winters in San Francisco, and we left San Francisco the day that city was shutting down, and went back to our home in New Jersey, thinking that we'd have more flexibility and freedom there. Well, within 2 weeks, New York shut down, and of course, that became such a serious epicenter. We lived outside of New York. Uh, but we ended up sheltering in place in our home in New Jersey, which is out in the country. So it was lovely. And our two grown sons and their significant others at the time came with us. And it was, I mean, when else in your adult life do your adult children come back and live with you for that period of time? And we so enjoyed that time with them. We had dinner together every night. Everyone spread out during the day and worked during the day in separate parts of the house. And then we had dinner together every night, and just got to talk and connect. We were very aware of being with each other and sort of watching out for each other and taking care of each other during that time. I finally had the time to write this book, which I had been writing dribs and drabs of for many years, but never pulled it all together. And so the upshot was it was a really strong family time and a time for many of us, and each of us in our family, I guess, to kind of make some changes in their life that were really good and positive. So we luckily stayed well and healthy. We took all the precautions and came out of it as my own family. I think for the better, and certainly, but very aware of and very heartbroken for the world
Yeah.
and what we continue to go through in the aftermath of that.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. If I put you in front of a bunch of third graders at career day and one of the kids says, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How would you answer that child?
Well, that's difficult because I don't really make a living doing what I'm doing, not writing. I spent most of my life as a volunteer. So for the years that I was raising our children, I was a volunteer on nonprofit boards and in their schools, and then universities, hospitals, cultural arts organizations, and so I was a full time volunteer, and I it's not a way to make a living, but it was a very rewarding and very fulfilling. And I'd certainly encourage anyone who's even at those transitional times in life. I even have said to my kids, if they're not happy in a job or they're looking at something else and they're not sure what to do, I say go volunteer somewhere. Pick a cause that you care
Yeah.
about, that you're excited about, and go work for that. And you'll meet wonderful people. You'll feel
Yeah.
really good, and you don't know what where that will take you.
Yeah.
There was a piece of advice that I read somewhere along the line that I think is so great. Someone said, even if you don't know where you're going, do something and do it the best you can. And
Yeah.
that's going to take you somewhere else.
Yeah.
And so someone will notice that, and you will be offered something. You will get somewhere from there. And I think that that's very true. So
So I think that's the perfect answer for a bunch of grade school kids to understand that community service and giving back to your community without wanting anything necessarily in return is pretty much, I think it's wonderful. It increases the altruism. It gives them an empathy. I think it's very necessary. Um,
and
so
you learn skills that you may never have tapped in
yeah,
yourself. I was president of the board of an organization for many years and did things in that role that I never would have had occasion to do or reason to do in my regular life, and
yeah,
develop skills that I never would have thought I needed or wanted, but I
yeah,
appreciate having now.
yeah. You just never know what's going to happen. Um,
Yeah,
Let me ask you this: what did you want to be when you were in the third grade? What was your dream?
a writer.
Yeah, and you're
So
living it. Yeah,
is living. Yeah, someone once said that. I remember in being in my 20s and not sure. I realized I couldn't make money. I couldn't make a living being a writer and artist. I had majored. I was a double major. I went to Colgate University and I majored in fine arts and literature. So I was totally unemployable when I graduated from college. But and neither of those were going to help me make a living. But I was searching in my 20s, and someone said, "Look back to when you were like 9 or 11. What did you love to do?" And of course, it was reading and drawing and writing. I was writing a lot of poetry then. And they said, "That's probably what you should be doing." And of course, I go back to, "Well, yeah, but I'm not going to make a living doing that."
Yeah.
But perhaps I might have. Had I been a stronger person when I was younger, maybe I would have at least tried that and risked that and spent some time in my youth, really focusing on writing of some kind, or my art. And I didn't, but it's funny that that was my dream back then, and that is finally what I've gotten to do now, and it's just been a lifelong yearning.
It's funny how life comes full circle. I was with my stepdaughter when she turned 18. We were at in Branson, Missouri. We were at an amusement park,
Mhm.
and she said something about, "What have you learned at this age?" And I basically said, "Everything comes full circle. No matter what you think that you're
Yeah,
trying to get away from, no matter what you think you already dealt with, one way or
yeah,
another, the older you get, it's going to come back and you're going to have to deal with it."
yeah.
So,
You really do. You
yeah,
really do. And even when you think that you've dealt with it, I mean, all the issues that I speak about in my book, the um, what it feels like to be adopted, and the grief and the loss and that sort of the trauma. And I felt like I dealt with that my whole life. I thought about it every day. I studied it. I read about it. I studied in college. I, you know, had therapy most of my life. And I thought, I got this. I know it. I've dealt with it. And then writing this book brought it together, I guess, in a condensed way, or had me really focus in on that aspect of my life and write it in a cohesive way. And it just really opened up a whole new level of living the feelings, living the sadness and the sort of the grief of it all, the loss. And I was so surprised by that. I thought, man, I thought I had this. I've been dealing with it. It's not like I pushed it away and didn't deal with it. I was dealing with it, but there continue to be different levels throughout your life. And I think you have to create the support systems in your life that help you face those and deal with them as they come up, because they, like I said, they can continue to come up in new ways that you may not have thought of before.
and I guess if you're going to write it out in the right way, there's no way to avoid that pain and revisiting it because you have to.
Yeah, you have to really relive it to capture the deep
Yeah.
feelings of it. Yeah.
So was it cathartic ultimately going through that level of revisiting now that it's actually out there and people are experiencing? Is there a cathartic? Is there like a relief?
There was, again, which surprised me in just the writing of it. I was so surprised by the level of just a deeper. It wasn't that I knew it all before, but there was just a deeper emotional level of going, wow, I kind of didn't fully appreciate that. And then feeling it and experiencing it. What I wrote the book to try and express to people what it feels like to be adopted. Not hearing about this, or not the intrigue of, oh, wondering about it or searching, not the stats on it, but this is what it feels like to live with it. This is that empty, deep black hole inside, and this is the loss of the self and what it feels like to be untethered to anything in this world, and to not know anything about yourself and never see yourself mirrored in another human being. And I wanted to try and capture those feelings, because I not only, for all of us born in the 50s, 60s, and 70s who were living in the era of closed adoption records, who know nothing about ourselves, but and the records are still sealed in 40 out of 50 states. But also there are issues that are coming up today that we all talk about and that we may be asked to vote about at some point in the future. The rights of donor conceived individuals, issues surrounding international adoptions, reproductive rights. And I wanted people to have that emotional intelligence of the feeling that those of us at the heart of those issues, not I'm not talking about adoption from my birth mother or my adopted mother's point of view. I'm the person that was handed from one person to a stranger and lived that life, and no one, and my rights are still not restored to me. even at my age and with all of my parents dead, New Jersey, where I was adopted, still says, no, you don't have the right to know your story, your origins. So I wanted to communicate that, and the feedback I've been getting is that people are going, "Oh wow, I didn't know, or I never realized," and so that's rewarding because I hope they can take that into their full life and have that understanding when they're making up their own minds about other issues.
So who's been a hero for you, an inspiration that's kind of fueled you to be who you are today?
Gosh, I don't know. I don't know that I have. I guess my dad, my adopted dad, is probably the closest thing. I guess he was a hero. I shouldn't say that, but I always tell the story, and it's in the book too. Of I was about, I don't know, I was very young, and I I was as a kid, and I looked at my dad one day and I said, "Dad, do you believe in heaven?" So I was scared I was scared of dying at that point. And I was scared of heaven, and I just said, "Dad, do you believe in heaven?" And he just looked down at me and smiled. He was a very quiet, calm, Midwestern Scandinavian descent gentleman, and he said, "I believe heaven is the way you make other people feel while you're still here on this earth."
Wow.
And that's the way he lived his life. I mean, I saw him live that. When he put those words to it and he was telling me that as a little girl, I felt so respected and grown up. And I think that's how I always hope to live my life as well. But that comment really was very formative for me.
That's great. So let me ask you this. If you can meet anybody alive on the planet right now that you admire or find inspirational, who would that be? Spend a little time with
Gosh.
them.
Yeah. You know, this is I haven't thought of that question before. So this is really off the top of my head, and it's more because of an artistic point of view. But I would love to meet Joni Mitchell,
Yeah.
and it's because I love her music, but I love her poetry, her lyrics,
Hmm.
and also because she gave a child up for adoption and has lived through that. And then they were reunited at one point. I don't know the status of their relationship now, but I would love to just sit and have a conversation with her about both writing and, and giving birth to a child and then relinquishing her.
So that's wonderful. Let me ask you this. I'm going to go back to your childhood, early years. What was the book that you read that made you want to either read more or write?
There wasn't a specific book. I grew up, of course, like all of us, my parents read to us, and we had this. I do remember the big golden book of poetry, and I still have old copies of it. They're falling apart, and I loved the poems in that, and I loved the illustrations. They were just dreamy. And there is one poem. I love the sea. I've always loved the sea. I don't know why. I've just always loved the sea. And there is one poem, Zoom, zoom, cuddle and croon over the crinkling sea. The moon man flings him a silver net fashioned of moonbeams three. And that just resonated. I just love that poem. Um, I think a lot of those little golden books. There was another book of children of the world, international children of the world, and they had illustrations of children from every country. And since I didn't know who I was or where I came from, I didn't know my heredity, I didn't know my heritage, my ethnicity. Um, and I had that typical 1950s, early 60s little girl haircut with very short bangs and a little bob cropped at and I had brown hair and I have these, little eyes that when I smile go into slits. And I looked at that book and I thought I looked like just like one of the little Chinese girls in that book. So I figured I was really from China. And I've been, taken off to the United States. But those little golden books of my very early childhood really meant a lot to me.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. Every day you wake up, what's your motivation? You obviously write and volunteer. There's a lot that you want to do, but what is the ultimate motivator for you?
I think the natural world is the real spark of everything. I know when I write, there's a lot of focus on the natural world and descriptions of the natural world in my writing, but I'm also a big photographer. And I think that just the visual, and again, we live right on the ocean here, and every day the light, the shadow, the difference, it's just a thrill and a joy every day to just and take that piece in, take that feeling in, and of course my family, the people I love, all of that. But I think it's just a real connection with the natural world around me that is very meaningful, very powerful to me.
I take a lot of photographs too.
Yeah.
there's something specific that's different about the photographic brain. What do you think that is? What do you think it is about photographers that want to capture life the way they do?
It's interesting because now that we all have cameras in our pockets,
Right.
we'll be out, and yet I think sometimes I think there's a different eye there because
Mhm.
I can be standing next to my husband and I can be taking a picture of the same thing, and our pictures don't look the same.
Right.
There's a difference in the composition or the lighting or something. Um, but and it's funny, I was a painter. I was an artist growing up and even through college. And I never drew well. I never had that ability, but I was good with color and composition, but I didn't have this technical skills well. So I think one of the reasons I turned to photography was because I didn't have to draw well and I could still capture the visual that I was trying to express. And what I'm always trying to capture in a photograph is, what does this moment feel like? It's not so much what does it look like, but it looks a certain way, but that look is giving me an emotion that I'm trying to share with you. So it's that feeling behind the moment, that natural moment that I'm trying to capture and pass along and share with someone.
That's interesting. That's very well said. So, of all of the things that you've done, overcome, and evolved into in your life, what are you the proudest of?
I think sort of like going back to the inspiration of my dad, I think that most people that know me would tell you I'm a kind person and a thoughtful person, and I think that just feels good. That feels good to think that you're bringing something to people you connect with and interact with, and you're not taking away from them, and you're respecting them, and just I used to say about my dad that it was very intentional on his part to recognize and elevate other people and to leave them always with a just with a moment of respect and peace, sort of in as they encountered him. And the letters we received when he passed, all everyone, people I didn't know, sort of talked about the same thing in him. And I think um, I would be very proud to have people say the same thing about me.
So, at the end of the day, everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, all of your readers, everyone that you work with, but you ultimately run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
I do think I'm kind and considerate. I do think at this point in my life, I'm strong and I'm brave. It wasn't always the case. Most of my life, I thought of myself as weak and afraid. I lived for many years with very strong panic disorder. I had terrible panic attacks. I was there was so much unknown about me. I was so unsettled and untethered. I just felt weak, and I didn't have any of this strength in me. It's been really the journey of my life, the work I've done to find out who I am and what that means, and to learn to understand these things as strengths and not just flukes. Um, that it's funny. For some of us, it takes a long time in life to get to a point of. I wish that I had been at this point in my 20s, and it would have been curious to see what I could have done with my life had I been starting out there. But I wasn't, and there were a lot of reasons that I wasn't.
Yeah.
And being adopted was a big reason that I struggled and I wasn't. Um, I've worked hard to get where I am now, and I I feel good about that. Of course, we all have, we're never done. There's always
Right.
a lot of work still to be done, but uh, it's yeah. I guess that's how I assess it now.
So we scratched the surface. We got a part of the story today. If anyone out there wants the full story, Abandoned at Birth is your book. Where can people get that? Where can they learn more about you? Reach out to you, any of that? Where's the best place?
I have a website, abandonedatbirthbook.com, where they can find me there, or on Instagram, Janet Sherlund Official. My book is pre-ordered now. It's pub date is May 7th. You can find it on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, bookshop.org, any of the usual suspects.
Excellent. Janet, thank you so much for your story, for your time. Best of luck with the release of the book.
Thank you so much. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Take care.